President, please be seated. The court is now in session. Today, the chamber continues to hear testimony of witness Nhan En and begins hearing testimony of another witness, that is to TCW 868. We also have a reserve witness, that is to TCW 919. Mr. M. Hoy, please report the attendance of the parties and other individuals to today's proceedings. Gracias. Mr. President, all parties to this case are present, and Mr. Nuji is present in the holding cell downstairs. He has waived his right to be present in the courtroom. The waiver has been delivered to the greffier. The witness who is to conclude his testimony today, that is Mr. Nhan En, is present in the courtroom. We also have a reserve witness today, that is to TCW 865, says the greffier. The witness confirms that through his best knowledge he has no relationship by blood or by law to any of the two accused, that is Nunji and Khieu Sampon, or any of the civil parties admitted in this case. The witness took an oath before the Iron Club statue, and the witness has Mr. Mom Ratir as the duty counsel. President, thank you. The chamber is informed that you, Mr. Nhan En, needs to visit the bathroom rather frequently. If there is the case, please signal to the bench and you may leave the courtroom to go to the bathroom. We also received a book authored by the witness from Risu. And Mr. Sonaron, the court officer, please distribute copy of the books to the relevant parties as well as to the judges of the bench, so that everyone can review the contents of the book, and we will make a decision on it later on. President, the chamber now rules on the request by Nuon Chea. The chamber has received a waiver from Nuon Chea dated 20 April 2016, which states that due to his health, headache, back pain, he cannot sit or concentrate for long, and in order to effectively participate in future hearings, he requests to waive his right to be present at the 20 April 2016 hearing. Having seen the medical report of Nuon Chea by the duty doctor for the accused at ECCC dated 20 April 2016, which notes that Nuon Chea has a chronic back pain and cannot sit for long, and recommends that the chamber shall grant him his request so that he can follow the proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs. Based on the above information and pursuant to Rule 81.5 of the ECCC internal rules, the chamber grants Nuon Chea his request to follow today's proceedings remotely from the holding cell downstairs via an audio-visual means. The chamber instructs the AV unit personnel to link the proceedings to the room downstairs so that Nguyen Chi can follow. This applies for the whole day. The chamber now gives the floor to the defense team for Nguyen Chi to continue putting further questions to the witness. And the remaining allotted time for the two defense team is one session only this morning. You may proceed, counsel. And the defense teams, could you please inform the court how you manage your allotted time? In principle, the defense team for Kieu Sampon uses less time than the defense team for Nguyen Chi. So please tell us how you arrange your remaining time. And the Kieu Sampon defense can use their time last if they wish to do so.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not quite sure if it is correct that we only have one session left, because yesterday I started at 3:16, giving us 44 minutes and not the entire session after the break. So I believe we do not only have this first session, but also the remainder of the fourth session yesterday. So I would suggest that we finish this first session and then have another 30 minutes after the first break.
You may discuss among yourself so that the defense team for Kieu Sampon may also have times to question the witness. And I do not know whether the Kieu Sampon defense would like to question the witness last. We may grant minimal additional time to you if they wish to question the witness last. Please inform the chamber.
Yes, indeed. Good morning. First of all, I confirm that indeed we want to put questions to the witness, and I confirm that we also see that the defense has not used up the totality of the session given to it yesterday. According to the record, my colleague Victor Koppe started putting questions to the witness at 3:15, so he should be given a few extra minutes to complete his cross-examination. That's what I can tell you at this point. But yes, indeed, we would like also to put questions to the witness as usual.
Judge Laverne, you have the floor.
Yes, unless I'm mistaken, this witness was scheduled for one full day, which means that the defense teams are given 2 sessions. What I don't understand is, how are you sharing your time between both of your teams? When will the Nguyen Chi team stop? And when you in the Kieu Sampon team will begin? As far as we have calculated it, we agreed that we will be given between 40 to 45 minutes in the Kieu Sampon defense team, which means that my colleague can use the rest of the time. But aside from this issue of the breakdown, I was speaking about the issue of the first of the session yesterday, which was not complete because my colleague Koppe started at 3:15 and not at 3 as normal. That's what I wanted to add. In any case, says Judge Laverne, I think 2 sessions will be given to you, so it's up to you to share the time.
Well, we have wasted 10 precious minutes already, so I will start soon. Good morning, Mr. Witness. Let me skip a few subjects and let me go straight to the important matters. Yesterday, you said that you arrived at S21. There was some confusion about when exactly. Let me confront you with what the head of the photography unit, Kim Srang, said in his WRI, that is E3/7618, English ERN 00164441, Khmer 00164438, and French 00164441. He said the following: the photography team later got 4 additional people, including Nem N. Nem N came to work with me, around mid-1978, about 6 months before Phnom Penh fell. Before that, Nem N was in a children's team living with Duik. Another witness, another person who had worked in S21 said, Sus T, has said that he never even heard of your name. And Duik, in his testimony before the trial chamber, E3/7468, his testimony of the 4th of August, said that you were the son of an S21 staff member and you were never allowed to take photographs outside. Now, there seems to be confusion from members of the S21 staff about when you came and what your role was. Could you please react to what I just read to you?
Good morning, Council. Good morning, Mr. President. Allow me to clarify the matter with Sriam. I came to work at Tul Slai prison in late July 1976. As for Suthi, I knew him very well, and he worked in the administrative part, that is to maintain the list of the incoming and outgoing prisoners. I, as a photographer, I went to the 6 zones throughout the country, and sometimes Onka invited me to go on those photography missions. However, sometimes it was the administrative section that assigns me to go on the photography missions. So I knew all the staff very well working at the Tul Slai prison. As for those who denied knowing me, that is right. Because during the Democratic Cambodia regime, it was not only those who worked, but everybody worked. And I was mature enough to know what's right and wrong. I knew all the staff, in particular Suthi, who maintains the list of the incoming and outgoing prisoners during the decay period.
So summarizing quickly, the suggestion of these witnesses implied in their statements that you had a minimum role in the photography unit is incorrect.
In relation to the work, there were 6 photographers, and we were assigned differently for photography sessions. Even at the Tul Slai, sometimes we were assigned to take photos during the daytime, while others are assigned to take the photos during the nighttime. And sometimes we have to work day and night. My main task was to take photo and to draw map. I started drawing map at the end point of the northeast zone in Anjang area. So these were parts of my main task during the regime.
Thank you, and sorry for interrupting, but I only have limited time, so I would appreciate it, Mr. Witness, if you give short answers to my question. Now, before I move to the whole procedure of taking photographs of incoming prisoners, let me ask you a few questions about Pre-SAR. In your statement and also in your other interviews with journalists, you said that you used to go to Pre-SAR and that you also used to take photos at the Pre-SAR location. Is that correct?
បាទសូមគោរពលោកប្រធាន
Yes, that is correct. The task was to take photography at the Preso. That is for the purpose of biography process making. Those at Preso were the second category. President interrupt Mr. Nyam En. Please listen to the question carefully and respond precisely to the question and not derailed from the point. If you used to go and take photography appraisal, just say so, and that's it. And if you are asked about other tasks or other matters, then you can respond appropriately. You need to respond only to the point that is put to you. That is the strategy employed by various parties at the court. Do you understand this reminder? Yes, counsel. I went to take a photography at a Preso, and it was a weekly trip.
The prisoners who were sent to Pre-SAR, were their photos taken in Phnom Penh or were they taken at location in Pre-SAR?
បាទ
Those people were not the prisoners, but they were considered the second type of categories, and if they could not be refashioned at the Preso, then they would be arrested and imprisoned at the Tul's Land. While they were at Preso, they were assigned to work in the rice fields.
Let me read a quote to you from Nim Kim Srang to speed up things, and then I will ask you whether you agree with him, yes or no. In his statement E3/7639, Khmer ERN 001627113, English 001627336, and French 003388079, Srang says the following, and I quote, "The majority of the prisoners who had been photographed were sent to farm rice in Pre-SAR. But aside from that, I don't know. Those prisoners sent to farm rice were mostly minor people. I went along and photographed that. I saw that they farmed rice. The reason I know is because I made some damaged photos and then had to extract those names and then followed up and photographed them at Pre-SAR." End of quote. Do you agree with this statement of Nim Kim Srang?
បាទ
Part of your statement you read out is correct. His name is Kam Srieng, not Kam Sreng. From my point of view, that is correct. And in the unit, there is one person named Hoi, but he's a different Hoi from Hoi, work at the security section. Prisoners were mostly brought in from factories, and they were not actually enemies, but they were those who made mistakes, and the photography was made, and not many of them were photographed at the tool slaying.
Do you know how many were photographed in Phnom Penh and how many weren't?
I'm speaking the truth at this tribunal. As for photography taking, prisoners were brought in from 6 or 7 zones throughout the country. For that reason, not every prisoner was photographed, since we could not take photo of them all, and they were taken and killed before the photographs were taken. Only a small number of prisoners were taken their photograph, and that is the truth.
Well, let me read another quote, the second quote from Kim Srang about this situation of people who were sent to Prey Sar, whether they were photographed, yes or no. He says in that same WRI E3/7639 at Khmer ERN 001627110, English 00162733234, and French 00338076. He says, and he describes an incident. I quote, "One day, when I was developing, photos were damaged. But when I requested to retake the photos, I could only find 2 of them. And I asked Duik, 'Brother, the prisoners brought in yesterday, where have they all gone?' He said they had all gone to the rice fields, to go photograph them at the rice fields." End of quote. He seems to suggest that also the people who were brought in at the reception center were photographed and then subsequently sent to Prey Sar. Is that correct?
បាទ
That is the truth. Prisoners who were photographed at the tool slaying, after the photo was taken, and since they were not important prisoners, they were taken away and executed. Previously, they would be executed in the surrounding areas around tool slaying, but later on the area was full, so they were taken away and killed elsewhere. And usually the film and the photography was in good shape, like 99.5% of them was in good shape.
Let me turn now to that topic of you taking photos, as you said today and yesterday. I just had a quick glance through your book, and I went to the pages where you describe the whole process of taking photos. And in that book, and I don't believe anywhere else, you refer to the dark room. Because obviously in those years, you will agree with me, there was no such thing as digital photography. Every photo that was taken at one point in time had to be developed in a dark room, in a special dark room, using special kind of chemicals. That is the case.
Can you just wait a second, Counsel? Just because you're using the book now, I think we should make the decision to admit it. Have other parties had I've scanned it. And I agree it's relevant, prima facie is relevant. Have other parties had the opportunity just enough to give a comment on admission?
Yes, Judge Venz, and we have no objection to admission.
Any comment from the co-lead lawyers?
Nous n'avons pas.
We haven't had the time to look at the book, to be frank with you.
À première vue, ça ressemble.
Apparently, this resembles prior statements from the witness, so we have no problems with that.
President, due to the urgency of questioning the witness, based on the request and from the prima facie view, and since no parties object to this request, the Chamber decides to admit the book authored by Ngam End into the case file. And that is pursuant to Internal Rule 87.4, and a reasoned decision will be issued in due course. For that reason, this book can be used by Counsel Copper and other parties during the questioning time to this witness. You may continue, Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I was describing to you the way photos were developed in those years. You took a training course in developing photography, you testified. Can you explain to me where exactly it was that photos from this little roll from the camera were taken out of the camera and then, together with chemicals in a dark room, were being developed? Where exactly did that happen?
I can recall that house very clearly. It is about 200 meters from Tools Lane. And actually, I asked the occupant of the house about the films and the negative in that house, and I was told that when they occupied the house, the films and the negatives were up to knee height, but they disposed them all. At that time, I have various cameras, and you may even see some of the cameras on the cover of the book. Also, inside there are photos of cameras that are used. President, you may refer to those photos, witness.
Then while you go through your papers, Mr. Witness, let me continue my questioning. You described a house 200 meters from Tulsleng. Which street was this house? You still seem to know. And what's the number of that house in that street?
You can go and see the house now, but since I am in the courtroom, I can't take you. I know that house very well. It's about 50 meters away from the sewage canal. and that is the Rolex camera. Is German made, and there are also cameras which were Japanese made. I still have in my possession these cameras. Some of them were sent to Australia, but I still have a number of cameras. I have all these photos to prove of my work at the touchline. President interrupts. Witness, please respond to the question. You have answered quite at length, but not to the point. The question is to the location of the house where you developed the frames and the negatives. Which house number and which street number? If you know it, can you do that? Maybe the house number changed from the previous regime, but if you know the previous number or the current number, please tell us. Because the road and the house numbering systems have changed. Even the national administration at the moment cannot administer all the houses and streets throughout the country. And of course, you were a former deputy governor of a district. You should know about this issue. But please restrain yourself and limit yourself to the point in the question. As we use a legal term, answer to the point in the court process, in the legal proceedings, and do not deviate from that point. And if the parties want to know other points, they will put those points to you. And witness, do you recall the last question that put to you? That is the house number and the street number of that house? Name and counsel regarding the workplace. I cannot recall where it is currently located or what it is numbered now, but I know the house, although I cannot recall the street name or the street number or the house number.
Is it Street 360 or Street 350?
My apology, Counsel. I do not know the street number, but I can recall the location of that house. I cannot forget it.
And in this house that you said you and the others developed the photos in a dark room, were all the negatives subsequently kept in that house? Not only the negatives that you were working in, but all the negatives of the photos that had been made, at S21. Is that the house where the photography unit kept all the negatives?
Counsel, in relation to negatives, there were 6 photographers. An individual photographer would photograph and develop the films, and they were the ones who kept the negatives. So usually, respective photographers would keep the film rolls and negatives.
So are you saying now that the negatives were not kept in that same house where the photographers developed their films?
Answer, that is true.
Just to be sure, Mr. President, I would like to show the witness again a still from the East German documentary, The Ankar. It's from E3/3085R. We have sent stills yesterday to the senior legal officer. It is this still showing negatives, and I would like to show this photo to the witness and ask him whether he recognizes these negatives of of the photo. Not the actual people on the photo, obviously, but the negatives as such.
President, your request is granted. Court officers, please pick up the document from counsel and hand it over to the witness to examine.
Are these similar like the negatives that you had in your hands back in the time you worked at S21?
Answer, Mr. President and counsel, that is true. This is the negatives of film from a type of camera which could only shoot 12 photos. So that type of camera was of good quality. So that camera was used at Dual Line.
Now let me move a bit in time, Mr. Witness. Is it correct that you and Duig were one of the very last persons to leave S21 and to escape S21 on the 7th of January 1979 when the Vietnamese troops were arriving?
Answer, that is true, counsel. Vietnam entered Phnom Penh, and Phnom Penh was liberated at noontime 12 p.m. on 7 January 1979, and at 3 o'clock I left Dual Train and I went through a Chinese embassy to Chom Ka Do.
And did you see indeed Duig leaving together with you and maybe also other staff members of S21?
Answer, that is true, counsel. On the 7th January 1979, I went past the Chinese embassy through roads to Tuol Tumpung, and I was with Khmer Rouge troops at the time, but we separated from one another at Baijan.
Now you said yourself that you left and escaped with nothing in your hands. Is that correct?
Mr. Counsel, before I left Phnom Penh, I had a lot of I did not have any belongings, but I had a gold pen and a watch together with a rifle.
Before I come to my questions in this respect, that begs, of course, the question how it's possible that you still have those cameras that you just showed to the court. If you didn't take anything with you, how did you subsequently get possession of those cameras which you said were used at S21?
Mr. President and Counsel, before I left Phnom Penh, I buried the staff in the ground. And when I returned, I could only find the staff from one location, but there were two places that I buried the staff in that ground. And during the time that I left Phnom Penh, I could have only some belongings with me, and including the book from China when I was sent to study there.
Now, just to be sure, you didn't see Duik or any other staff member carrying with them files from S21, photographs from S21, or the negatives from S21. Is that correct?
Council, no one could get anything or stuff at the time. Everyone could get with them a few rifles or weapons while they were living, and we had only a set of clothes with all of us.
And now, Mr. Witness, I'm coming to my most important question to you, it's the following. Are you in a position to explain why it is that back in '79, and presumably, but especially now, and also in the years before, only around 5,000 negatives were found. 5,000 negatives, 5,000 photos in negative were found. Maybe now a little bit more, but roughly that number. Do you have any idea if indeed it is correct what the prosecution is arguing and what the trial chamber has decided? There were 12,000 or 15,000 prisoners. Where are those other 7,000 or 10,000 negatives? Are you in a position at all to be able to explain that?
What you said is true. During the time that we shot the photographs at Tuas Lang, the negatives of films rolls were kept by respective photographs. Perhaps some of the films and negative may have taken by Duik or may have been asked by Duik to be kept. And some leaders at the zone or district committees asked to have those films and negatives kept by themselves.
But is it correct that you are now speculating that you don't really know where those negatives are, if they exist, or if they have existed at all?
There are existing negatives, but the storage of those negatives were at some various places. And after the 7th January 1979, I went back to the house where I worked, and I asked the owner of the house, and they said that they burned all those negatives and films. But I can say that there were a lot of negatives and films rolls. President, Council, you are running out of time. And first, now the floor is given to other parties, and you will be granted with some additional times at the end of the testimony of this witness.
Mr. President, allow me to at least finish the subject. I have a few questions, one or two questions on this subject. Mr. Witness, do you agree with Kim Srang's statement when he says, I estimate that more than 2,000 to 3,000 prisoners were photographed at S21? He is saying about 2,000 to 3,000 prisoners were photographed.
President, please hold on, Mr. Witness, and please give your response shortly and slowly, because there is interpretation into other languages. And you have the floor now, International Deputy Co-Prosecutor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can we have a ERN reference for that? Because my recollection of what the witness said is quite different, that he was talking about the number of photographs he took.
It's E3/7639 English ERN 00162 and French and Khmer ERN is French 00162 and Khmer I will be giving you soon. Let me ask the question differently to avoid further objection. Is it correct that Srang or that the photography unit rather took about 2,000 to 3,000 photos?
Mr. President, Council, that is not true. If I did do the calculation in 1977, a lot of photos were taken, and they started the number with number 1 up to 500 or 600, so that can be counted how many prisoners per day entered S21. The 6 photographers did not have even times to eat. It was a hard labor for us taking photos at the time. In 1977, many people entered S21, and we had a lot of work to do. And negatives or film rolls were, it was in piles up to our knee.
Since I don't have any more time, let me ask you the final question. Then, Mr. Witness, it's very unfortunate that I'm cut short. But 5,000 negatives, 5,000 biographical records, 5,000 photos, about 4,000 confessions. In the new OCIJ list, a number of 5,000 executions. In a very important Chinese document, reference is made to 5,000 victims. Is it possible, in your experience, in your memory, that only 5,000, around 5,000 people were detained at S21 and possibly subsequently executed?
President, please hold on. You have the floor first, International Deputy Co-Prosecutor.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I don't have any objection to counsel having a few additional minutes to do this properly, but if he's going to try to lead the witness with references to other evidence that he believes exists, he should cite that so we can all check it. I don't know, for example, where he gets the figure of the total number of confessions that were recovered at S21 and these other references, though I think he's trying to lead the witness here, and unless he does it properly, confronting him with evidence, I would object.
I cannot believe, Mr. President, that the prosecution still doesn't know what Chandler says on the amount of confessions that were found. 4,166.
Counsel, you know how it is.
No, I don't. Yeah, I know how it is, but you cut my time short. That's why I summarize the evidence. You want me now to give all the ERNs of evidence that you have been dealing with for the last 8 years? Mr. Witness, is it correct what I just said?
President, please provide everyone with the EON numbers or identity of the documents that you quoted, including the document from China that this witness had. Please provide the ER numbers in 3 languages if possible, and if not, in 1 language.
Fine. As I said, the quote about 4,166 confessions, I believe, is directly from Chandler, his book that you have quoted extensively in your judgment. The 5,000 from the Chinese document is the Geng Biao report that was extensively discussed with expert Becker. The 5,000 negatives, that number you can find literally everywhere in the case file.
Counsel,
I don't
with
have the
all
ERNs
due
right now.
respect, I mean, you know what ERNs are and how it is quoted.
I withdraw the question.
President, now the floor is given to the international deputy co-prosecutors to put question to the witness. Court officers, please move the microphone eastward.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Witness. My name is Dale Lysak. I'll be asking you some questions this morning and possibly for a little bit this afternoon. I want to go back first to some questions about your personal background. You've stated in your interviews that you joined the revolution when you were about 11 years old. How old were you when the Khmer Rouge first provided you with a gun?
Thank you, Mr. International Co-Prosecutor. Mr. President. Well, after Lon deposed the king from the throne, I joined the revolution in 1971 on 24 July in 1971. 5 of my siblings joined the revolution, and at the time I carried a type of gun, Marayite, said the witness. President interrupts. Mr. Witness, please, I remind you again to respond to the limit of the question. That will lead to the wasting of the time, and then you will be inundated with the questions, and you will be pressed with the questions based on the strategy and procedures in this court, and you will at the end be impacted by the question. And please, once again, I remind you to respond to the question to the limit of it.
You referenced a gun called a Marriott. Can you describe for us what that gun is? And can you also tell us, were you part of a children's unit when you joined the revolution? And did all the children in your revolution, in your unit, have guns?
Mr. Lawyer, in relation to this, the revolution that I joined, I had Marayite gun. That gun was perhaps from Germany or another country. At the time, I got the gun from the North Vietnamese troops. And they came through Hu Yun and Hu Nam, and they came to my house at the time.
And my other question was, and we're talking here about the period after you joined the revolution, before the war ended on 17 April 1975. Were you part of a children's unit at any time, and did the other children also have weapons?
Mr. Co-Prosecutor, yes. There were children in the United Front of Cambodia, Kamson Marayat Carabin rifles were provided to perhaps 30 of them. And that guns or rifles were sent from Kampong Thom.
And last question on this subject, what were the age of the other children in your unit?
They were not much older than me, and we were of the same age, I believe. And they were stationed at Kampong Leng, Kampong Chnambek field, and they would also be asked to be stationed along up to Kampong Siem.
Thank you. Counsel for Nuon Chea has asked you some questions about your trip to China, or the time you spent in China studying. I want to try to clarify something regarding what you did when you first returned from China in June 1976. And in your more recent OCIJ interview, this is E3/9532, answer number 6, you stated, I quote, "Upon my return from China, I returned back to work at Office 870, and then they assigned me to work as a photographer for the Tuol Sleng office and around the country," end of quote. And I also want to read to you, refresh you about your original OCIJ interview from 2007. This is document E368, English ERN 00401-819, Khmer 00162-837 through 838, French 00195-658. And you were referring here to the period after you first returned from China. And you said, quote, "After I arrived in Phnom Penh, I didn't go yet to work at S21. I was at the office of the Chief of General Staff, moving around to take photos." Question, what did you do after you arrived in Cambodia? I stayed at the General Staff of Phnom Penh in Monavong Hospital, which you identify as P98. At that time, I started to set up a printing shop to publish newspaper and magazine. A question, who was your chief then? Answer, I had two chiefs. One was Tapang, who was a special agent of Pol Pot, and another person was named Nuon, who was close with Son Sen. What was Nuon's role? Answer, according to Ankar, they called him city messenger, end of quote. You were then asked 2 pages later how long you worked near the Monavong Hospital after returning from China. Your answer was maybe only 3 to 4 months. It was the windy season at that time, so it was perhaps November and December. I ask you this, does that refresh your memory, Mr. Witness? Was there a period after you returned from China where you worked at a office near the Monavong Hospital before being transferred to S21?
Mr. Co-Prosecutor, that is true. after my return from China before I joined S21. I spent much time photographing. That is true, what you said.
And during this period, you were working at this office near the P98 Monavong Hospital. Who were you reporting to, and what was your primary assignments? What were you doing?
This is also one important fact. I have several tasks. One of them was to deliver messages from Monivong Hospital, which is a Robertson Army Hospital. I delivered those messages or letters to the Khmer Hospital. Usually I was the one who was assigned to deliver those important messages. Some of the letters or documents were signed by Pol Pot, and I delivered them to the Khmer. So I have many other tasks, but I don't want to describe them in details.
And during that period, when you first returned from China, did you begin going on trips to the provinces with the Khmer Rouge leaders to take photographs? Or is that something that only happened after you went to S21?
When I worked in Tuslai, I also involved in taking photographs of Uncle Pol Pot or Chinese delegations or other delegations from the communist bloc. Usually I would be assigned to take a photograph along Pol Pot and Son Sen, but I rarely saw Khieu Samphan at the time. So I was so busy with taking photographs of those important people. I would need more time to describe those in details. And as I said, I have documents and photos to prove that I took countless photos of leaders of the regime. There was only one newspaper at the time, that is the Patriot newspaper or Revolution newspaper.
How often did you go on trips to the provinces, to the zones, to take pictures? Was it once a month? Was it more often? Was it less often? Can you tell us how frequently you went on these trips to the zones with Khmer Rouge leaders?
Allow me to describe the event. My main task was at Tuslai, and when I was available, I would be sent to various zones, and that varied. Sometimes it happened once a month, sometimes it happens once every 2 months, depending on the visit of the delegations, mainly from the communist bloc, namely China or Yugoslavia. And I have documents to prove that.
Who assigned you to go take these photographs on these trips, and what were the photographs used for?
During the regime, there was a Patriot newspapers, revolution newspapers, and there were also magazines, the youth flags magazines. So the photos were used for these medias. And some photos may also be sent to various embassies stationed in Phnom Penh.
Mr. President, with your leave, I'd like to provide to the witness at this time document E3/9295, E3/9295, which we believe to be a monthly magazine from the during the Democratic Kampuchea regime, to see if the witness can identify.
Yes, you may do that.
What I've presented presented to you, Mr. Witness, is some of the pages from a monthly publication or magazine, E3/9295. Can you look at this and tell us if you remember this magazine and whether this is one of the magazines that photos you took were used for?
I can say that 80% of the photos used in the magazine was mine. This is about the rubber product meant to export to China, and it was at the Kampong Sam port. And I even knew where these magazines were produced. It was near the Central Market. The photo in my hand is the photo of Tanat together with the Chinese delegation.
Yeah. And who was it that published this magazine? Do you know, was there a specific unit or office that was responsible for doing that?
During the regime, I can recall that it was Hu Nam who was in charge of information and propaganda, and Madame Ieng Teret was in charge of education, and there was also another magazine in relation to education, although it was not widely distributed to various zones. So people who were in charge were Hun Sen, Tanat, and Hu Nam. And I knew only the sections that deal with information. Thank you, Deputy Co-Prosecutor. It is now convenient to have a short break. We'll take a break now and resumed at 10:30. Court officer, please assist the witness during the break time and invite him back into the courtroom at 10:30. The court is now in recess.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រោកឈរ